Ever watched The Simpsons and felt like you missed something important? You're not alone. This show has been hiding secrets, Easter eggs, and cryptic clues for decades, many of which even the biggest fans overlook. Today, we're going to uncover these forgotten secrets so you'll never watch The Simpsons the same way again. The Simpsons isn't just a comedy series, it's a cultural phenomenon. From predicting world events to sneaking in blink and you miss it clues, this show has mastered the art of hidden storytelling. In this video, we're digging deep into the Easter eggs and forgotten secrets that most viewers completely miss. So grab your donuts, because we're going on a mystery hunt across Springfield. Alright, so here, as something most casual fans never realize about The Simpsons, Springfield is full of secret codes and hidden messages that have been staring us in the face for years. And trust me, once you start noticing them, it's like peeling back the layers of a giant mystery sitting right inside an animated comedy. The writers didn't just create a city full of goofy characters and funny moments. They built an entire puzzle box where every number on a door, every street sign, even the random things you see in the background can have meaning if you look closely enough. Take, for example, one of the longest-running mysteries, the number 742. If you've watched The Simpsons, you've seen this number dozens of times without even thinking about it. It's the house number of the Simpson family 742 Evergreen Terrace. Most fans probably assume it's just a random choice. But here's where things get interesting. That number actually shows up in several other places throughout the show. Background posters, license plates, even digital clocks have flashed 742 at odd moments. Now, the showrunners have played coy about its meaning, but hardcore fans have theories. Some believe it's tied to a real-world address connected to the show's creators. Others think it's just an inside joke between the writers. But here's the kicker. Episodes featuring major plot twists or key events seem to sneak in that number more often than regular episodes. Coincidence? Or are the writers winking at the audience, saying, hey, something big is about to go down? And it doesn't stop there. Think about the chalkboard gags in the opening sequence. Bart Simpson standing there writing a new line every episode over and over again. Most of us just chuckle and move on. But eagle-eyed fans have noticed patterns in what he writes. Some episodes hint at future storylines. Others make references to real-life events happening at the time the episode aired. There was even one where Bart wrote, "I will not wait 20 years to make another movie." And guess what? Almost exactly 20 years later, the Simpsons movie sequel rumors began circulating. Was that an Easter egg, a prediction, or just the writers trolling us? That's the beauty of it. You can never tell if it's intentional or not, which keeps fans coming back to reanalyze episodes years later. Now let's talk about those cryptic signs around Springfield. Next time you watch, pay close attention to the background whenever characters walk down the street. The shop names aren't random. Places like the Android's Dungeon or King Toots' music store often have double meanings. Some are clever puns, others are nods to obscure movies, music albums, or even old-school cartoons the writers grew up watching. There was one episode where the Quickie Mart sign briefly changed to read, "Apu knows what you did," after a subplot involving Apu's secret past. Blink and you'd miss it, but it was there, hidden like a clue in a detective story. And then there are the numbers tied to real-world math and science jokes. Remember the episode where Homer becomes super smart after getting a crayon removed from his brain? On a chalkboard in the background, there's a complex equation that, when solved, actually predicts the mass of the Higgs boson particle years before scientists confirmed it in real life. Think about that for a second. A bunch of comedy writers slipped cutting-edge physics into a cartoon about a dysfunctional family and a beer-loving dad. Either someone in that writing room was secretly a genius, or they were leaving behind codes for fans smart enough to crack them. Even character names sometimes carry hidden messages. Take Jebediah Springfield, the town founder. His real name, revealed in a later episode, turns out to be Hans Sprungfeld, a criminal and con artist. The name change was a clue hidden in earlier episodes where statues and plaques showed slight variations in his name. Fans who caught it early basically solved the mystery before the writers officially revealed it. It's like the showrunners were rewarding viewers for paying attention. And if you think these codes are just random fun, consider this. Whole fan communities online spend hours dissecting each episode frame by frame. They've built giant lists of recurring numbers, phrases, and visual clues. Some claim episodes form bigger patterns when watched in a certain order. Others argue the writers are building a secret mythology underneath all the jokes, like a puzzle only the most dedicated fans will ever solve. Whether or not that's true, the fact that The Simpsons invites this level of investigation shows how layered the writing really is. You know, one of the things that makes The Simpsons so legendary is how it pulls in celebrities from every corner of pop culture. Musicians, actors, politicians, athletes, you name it. And there's a good chance Springfield has welcomed them at some point. But here's the thing. While some guest stars are front and center, playing themselves in hilarious ways, others slip right under the radar. In fact, some of the biggest names in Hollywood and beyond have lent their voices to the show without most viewers even realizing it. And that's where things get really interesting, because these hidden cameos are like Easter eggs hiding in plain sight, waiting for fans to uncover them years later. Take Dustin Hoffman, for example. Most people have no idea he was on The Simpsons because he didn't even use his real name. Back in the show's early seasons, Hoffman voiced Mr. Bergstrom, Lisa's substitute teacher in the iconic episode Lisa's Substitute. But when the credits rolled, instead of Dustin Hoffman, fans saw the name Sam Eddick, a little play on the word Semitic because the character was Jewish. So for years, unless you were a die-hard fan reading behind-the-scenes interviews, you probably had no clue one of Hollywood's biggest stars was right there shaping one of the show's most emotional episodes. And Hoffman wasn't the only one who decided to fly under the radar. Michael Jackson, yes, the Michael Jackson also appeared in The Simpsons, disguised under a fake name. In the episode Stark Raving Dad, he played the character of Leon Kompowski, a man in a mental institution who believes he's Michael Jackson. The voice sounded exactly like him because, well, it was him, but in the credits, the name John J. Smith appeared instead. Jackson didn't even sing his own songs in the episode because of contractual reasons. Another singer mimicked him for the musical parts, so fans were left debating for years if it was really him or just a really good impersonator until the truth finally came out. Then there are the celebrities who appear as completely original characters rather than themselves, making it even harder for viewers to catch on. Take Meryl Streep, for instance. She voiced Jessica Lovejoy, the rebellious daughter of Reverend Lovejoy, in the episode Bart's Girlfriend. Unless you paid close attention or checked the credits, you'd never guess one of the most celebrated actresses in Hollywood history was behind the mischievous girl who turned Bart's world upside down. It's like the showrunners had this ongoing game with fans: how many A-listers can we sneak in before anyone notices? And speaking of sneaky cameos, let's not forget about Ringo Starr from the Beatles. His appearance came in the early episode Brush with Greatness, where Marge pursues her love for painting and sends Ringo one of her portraits from decades earlier. He voices himself in the episode, but here's the thing. At the time, it wasn't heavily advertised like later big-name appearances. So, unless you were watching closely or recognized his distinctive voice, it was easy to miss that one of the most famous musicians on Earth was casually hanging out in Springfield. What's even more fascinating is how the writers sometimes use celebrities in ways that played against their public image. Take Leonard Nimoy, best known as Spock from Star Trek. He appeared multiple times, often as this mystical, almost omniscient version of himself, delivering cryptic lines and disappearing mysteriously, like some kind of Springfield wizard. His cameos were so subtle yet so clever that fans still quote them to this day, especially his line about the cosmic ballet continuing. It wasn't just a guest appearance. It was a mini-performance, layered with in-jokes for sci-fi fans. Then there are blink-and-you'll-miss-it cameos where celebrities voice background characters with just a few lines. For example, did you know that Johnny Cash voiced the coyote in Homer's famous desert hallucination sequence in El Viaje Misterioso de Nuestro Jomer? Most fans didn't realize at the time because the voice was so different from his usual singing tone, yet it added this surreal, almost spiritual vibe to the entire episode. It's details like these that give The Simpsons its rewatch value. You think you read just seeing a funny scene, but years later you learn one of music's greatest legends was the voice guiding Homer through a peyote-induced vision quest. And as the seasons went on, this tradition of sneaky cameos only grew. Sometimes entire episodes were packed with celebrity voices, but because the show didn't always spotlight them or use their real names in credits, casual viewers never connected the dots. It's like the writers and producers wanted to reward the eagle-eyed fans who paid attention while keeping everyone else guessing. You might laugh at a random background character delivering a single hilarious line without realizing it was voiced by someone who's won an Oscar or headlined sold-out arenas. What makes all of this even better is how The Simpsons managed to stay timeless through these cameos. Even when certain celebrities faded from mainstream headlines, their appearances in Springfield kept them alive in pop culture in this weird animated time capsule. So when you rewatch an old episode and suddenly recognize a voice you didn't notice before, it's like discovering a hidden treasure buried in a show you thought you already knew by heart. Now, let us talk about the thing that probably made The Simpsons even more famous than it already was, the so-called predictions. You know what I mean? Those moments when the show seems to foresee the future with such eerie accuracy that people can't help but wonder if Matt Groening and the writers have a time machine tucked away somewhere in the Springfield nuclear power plant. These predictions have become internet legends, fueling countless YouTube videos, articles, and conspiracy theories. But here's the real question. Are these moments truly predictions or just clever coincidences amplified by decades of storytelling? One of the most famous examples, of course, is the episode where Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. When that episode aired back in 2000, the idea of Trump actually sitting in the Oval Office seemed like a punchline, a satire of celebrity culture and politics colliding. Yet fast forward 16 years, and there he was, being sworn in as the 45th president. The internet went wild, pointing to that Simpsons clip like it was proof the writers had access to the future. But when you look closer, it wasn't just a random guess. The writers have admitted they were making fun of the most outrageous scenario they could think of at the time. So was it a prediction? Maybe, but it was also rooted in real-life possibilities, which makes the whole thing even more interesting. Because satire has a funny way of becoming reality when the world itself starts acting like a cartoon. But that's far from the only example. How about the time The Simpsons showed smartwatches years before they became mainstream? In the 1995 episode Lisa's Wedding, we see a future version of Lisa's fiancé talking into his watch as if it's a phone. At the time, it looked like pure sci-fi comedy. Now, we've got Apple Watches and countless other smart devices that make that scene feel oddly prophetic. The same episode also showed video calls decades before Zoom or FaceTime became part of our everyday lives. Again, were the writers predicting the future, or were they just riffing on tech trends that eventually came true because technology always seems to catch up with imagination? Then there's the discovery of the Higgs boson particle. This one blows my mind every time. In the 1998 episode, The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer becomes an inventor and writes a complicated equation on a chalkboard. Years later, scientists realized that the equation actually predicts the mass of the Higgs boson particle with surprising accuracy. Let that sink in for a second. A joke in a cartoon about a bumbling dad eating donuts casually referenced one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs of the 21st century. Was there a science genius hiding in the writer's room? Or was it just a case of mathematical coincidence that happened to line up with reality later on? And we can't forget the episode where The Simpsons seemed to predict Disney buying 20th Century Fox. In 1998, an episode showed a quick gag of the 20th Century Fox studio lot with a sign underneath reading a division of Walt Disney Co. It was just a throwaway joke back then, something you'd blink and miss. But in 2019, over 20 years later, Disney actually purchased 20th Century Fox, making that joke weirdly prophetic. It's moments like these that blur the line between satire and prediction because sometimes the most ridiculous jokes end up becoming real headlines. Another moment that had fans freaking out was the episode showing faulty voting machines during the US election. In a 2008 episode, Homer tries to vote for Barack Obama, but the machine keeps changing his vote to John McCain. 4 years later, real-life news reports surfaced of voting machines in Pennsylvania glitching and switching votes. Suddenly, people were pointing back to The Simpsons like it was some kind of animated oracle. And then there's an episode where the Ebola virus is casually mentioned years before the 2014 outbreak made global news. In the 1997 episode, Lisa Sachs, Marge suggests Bart read a book titled Curious George and the Ebola Virus. At the time, Ebola wasn't widely talked about in the US, so the reference felt random. Years later, when the outbreak happened, people started claiming the show had predicted it. In reality, Ebola had existed long before, and the writers likely picked it because it sounded scary and exotic for the joke. But once again, life imitated art in a way that made fans look back with a sense of unease. What makes all of this so fascinating is how fans comb through old episodes every time something big happens in the world, almost like they expect The Simpsons to have called it first. And honestly, sometimes they have. Other times, it's just the law of averages. When you produce hundreds of episodes filled with cultural references, technology jokes, and political satire, a few of them are bound to hit close to reality eventually. But the sheer number of so-called predictions keeps the debate alive because even if most are coincidences, some feel just a little too accurate to ignore when you think about The Simpsons. The first names that probably pop into your head are the obvious ones: Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, Maggie. Maybe Mr. Burns with his excellent catchphrase, or Ned Flanders with his over-the-top neighborly charm. But here's the thing. Springfield is packed with characters beyond the main cast, and many of them have hidden backstories, secret connections, and little moments that even longtime fans often overlook. These side characters are like puzzle pieces scattered across episodes, and when you start paying attention, you realize the writers have been slipping in details that make the world of The Simpsons feel way bigger than it looks on the surface. Take Hans Moleman, for instance. He's that frail, squinty-eyed guy who always seems to be the butt of life's cruelest jokes. Whether he's getting hit in the groin with a football, crashing a car, or just randomly suffering some bizarre accident, Hans Moleman has practically become Springfield's resident victim of fate. But what most viewers do unrealize is that Moleman wasn't even supposed to be as old as he looks. In one episode, he claims he's only 31 years old. That's right, 31? The implication is that life in Springfield has beaten him down so much that he looks decades older than he really is. It's dark humor, sure, but it also hints at this unspoken story about a guy whose entire existence seems cursed, like a running commentary on how Springfield treats its forgotten residents. Then there's Disco Stu, the guy with the platform shoes and the permanent 1970s swagger. Most people see him as just a walking punchline, a character frozen in time with his love of disco music, but if you look closer, there are hints about his life sprinkled throughout the series. In one episode, you learn he used to be married to Marge's sister Selma. In another, there's a throwaway line suggesting he once had a successful career before disco died out and left him clinging to the past. He even has a moment where he laments that disco records are now being used as landfill. Suddenly, this goofy background character feels like a symbol for people who peaked in one era and never moved on, living in nostalgia while the world changes around them. And what about characters like Rainier Wolf-Castle? On the surface, he's just the show's parody of Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Hollywood action star with ridiculous one-liners in movies like McBain. But over time, the show reveals little bits about his personal life. He goes through a messy divorce, struggles with his acting career, even shows moments of unexpected vulnerability. For a character who could have stayed a simple stereotype, the writers gave him depth in tiny doses, like a secret subplot hiding in the background of Springfield's chaos. Another great example is Gil Gunderson, the unlucky salesman who can never catch a break. He pops up trying to sell cars, real estate, insurance, you name it, and he always fails miserably. He's nervous, sweaty, constantly on the edge of losing everything, and the show never gives him a real win. Some fans believe Gil represents the darker side of the American dream, the people who try their hardest but still fall through the cracks. He's funny, sure, but there's also this underlying sadness to him. like he's living in a completely different show, a tragic one, while everyone else goes about their cartoonish lives. And let's not forget Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure, two characters voiced by the legendary Phil Hartman. After Hartman's tragic passing in 1998, the characters were retired from the show, but before that, they had some of the most intriguing little arcs hidden beneath the comedy. Lionel Hutz, the shady lawyer, had these moments that hinted at just how incompetent and desperate he really was. He once offered legal advice in exchange for literal cigarettes. Meanwhile, Troy McClure, the washed-up actor always introducing himself with, "You may remember me from such films as," seemed to have this entire fallen Hollywood star story happening off-screen. He was married to Selma at one point, mostly as a publicity stunt to revive his career, adding this weird layer of showbiz satire to a character most people saw as just a punchline machine. Even minor characters like the yes guy, the one who always says, "Yasses," with that weird inflection of hidden histories. In one blink and you'll miss it gag, there's a suggestion he might have been some kind of old-timey villain or con man in his younger years. Jasper, the bearded old man with the catchphrase, "That's a paddling," is another one. Most people just laugh at his one-liners, but here and there you get glimpses of his past. Like the time he froze himself in the Quickie Mart freezer thinking it was the future of medicine. What's so fascinating about all of this is how The Simpsons uses these background characters to make Springfield feel alive. They're not just filler. They have running jokes, evolving backstories, and connections to the main characters that span seasons. Some fans even track their appearances, piecing together theories about their lives from single lines or visual clues. It's like the writers built an entire second layer of storytelling happening behind the main plot, rewarding viewers who pay attention and turning even the smallest character into part of the show's massive, interconnected world. One of the most brilliant things about The Simpsons is how it rewards people who really pay attention. Sure, the jokes are funny on the surface, but if you look closely, sometimes just for a split second, you'll notice the show is absolutely loaded with visual gags hiding in the background. These aren't the kind of jokes that get pointed out by the characters or explained in dialogue. They're just sitting there, waiting for sharp-eyed viewers to catch them. And honestly, the more you start spotting them, the more you realize the animators and writers were playing an entirely separate game with the audience. A game where the punchline often flashes by so fast you have to pause the episode to really appreciate it. Take the shop signs, for example. Springfield is a city built on bad puns and clever wordplay. Every time the camera pans across the town, there's some new business with a ridiculous name in the background. Places like The Painless Dentistry with the slogan, "We cater to cowards," or Stoner's Pot Palace, which sells houseplants, not what you were probably thinking at first glance. These quick visual jokes often have nothing to do with the main story, but they make the town feel alive. Like there's this entire world of humor happening just outside the characters' conversations. And it doesn't stop with shop names. Think about all the times we've seen billboards in the background during driving scenes or transitions. They change constantly, episode to episode, often referencing current events, pop culture, or just absurd Springfield businesses. One moment you'll see an ad for "Try our new caramel tobacco," and in another episode, there's a political campaign sign that says something ridiculous like, "Birch Barlow, give a hoot, vote for the Newt." The writers used these signs as a way to sneak in extra layers of comedy, almost like they were daring viewers to keep up with the rapid-fire pace of their jokes. Then, of course, there's the Quickie Mart price signs. Appu's store is ground zero for some of the funniest visual gags in the series. The prices are always ridiculous, changing from one episode to the next. Things like milk, $99.99, or hot dogs, yesterday as at today as prices. You'd have to pause to read them sometimes because they flash by so quickly. But when you do, you realize the animators were essentially hiding mini stand-up routines in the background of every episode. The couch gags in the opening sequence are another legendary example. Everyone knows them, but what's easy to forget is how wildly creative they got over the years. Sure, some are simple, like the family just sitting on the couch in different ways, but others are incredibly elaborate, referencing everything from classic movies to famous works of art. There's one where The Simpsons, become characters in the Flintstones, another where they're in a Star Wars scene, and even one where the whole sequence turns into a stop-motion parody of Robot Chicken. These aren't just throwaway jokes. They're Easter eggs for pop culture fans, little love letters to the audience saying, "Hey, we know you're watching closely, so here's something extra for you." And let's not forget the chalkboard and saxophone gags in the opening credits. Everyone focuses on what Bart writes on the chalkboard, but Lisa's saxophone solo changes in some episodes too. Sometimes it's just a different melody, but in certain episodes it references popular songs or moments from music history. It's subtle, so if you're not paying attention, it flies right by, but it's yet another layer showing how much thought goes into even the smallest details of the show. Another classic example of visual humor is how the show uses newspapers and TV screens. There are countless scenes where a character reads a headline, but if you pause and look at the smaller text or side stories, there are often extra jokes crammed in there. A headline might say something straightforward like, "Mayor Quimby re-elected," but then a tiny subheading will read, "Voter turnout at all-time low," turning the whole thing into a sly political commentary. Even background characters get in on the visual humor. While the main story is happening in the foreground, you might notice someone like Snake, the criminal stealing something in the background, or comic book guy holding a sign with some sarcastic comment that has nothing to do with the scene but adds an extra laugh for people who catch it. It's like the show has layers operating all at once: the main plot, the dialogue jokes, and then this secret world of background humor that only the most observant fans ever fully appreciate. One of my personal favorites is when the animators use the town as businesses to tell little side stories across multiple episodes. For example, the Leftorium, Ned Flanders' store for left-handed products, keeps showing up in different states of success or failure depending on what is happening in Springfield's economy or in Ned's personal life. It's subtle world building through visual comedy, and it makes the whole town feel consistent even when the main plot doesn't focus on it. And then there are the movie posters sprinkled throughout the show. Springfield's theaters are always showing some bizarre, over-the-top film with titles like Ben-Hur 2 or Look Who's Oinking. These posters often parody real Hollywood trends, cramming an entire satire of the film industry into a single frozen frame on the wall of a building or inside the Aztec Theater lobby. It's so quick you can miss it, but when you catch it, it feels like you've uncovered a hidden bonus joke written just for you. If there's one thing that makes The Simpsons stand apart from almost every other animated show in history, it's the writing team. We're talking about a group of some of the sharpest minds in comedy, many of whom had Ivy League backgrounds, experience in stand-up, or even ties to mathematics and philosophy. And here's the thing, those writers didn't just fill episodes with surface-level jokes for quick laughs. They layered the show with secret messages, meta-commentary, and clever nods that most viewers never catch on the first watch. Some of these are Easter eggs meant to reward die-hard fans, while others feel like the writers talking directly to the audience through the fourth wall, sneaking in little winks that reveal just how self-aware the show has always been. Take the episode The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie Show, for example. On the surface, it's a story about adding a new character, Poochie, to the beloved Itchy and Scratchy cartoon, only for fans to absolutely hate it. But look a little deeper and you realize the entire episode is the writers poking fun at network executives and audience expectations. They were essentially criticizing the very idea of TV shows being forced to stay fresh with cheap gimmicks to keep ratings high. Even the line where comic book guy calls it the worst episode ever was the writers mocking real-life fans who nitpicked every episode online back in the early days of the internet. It was meta before meta-humor became mainstream, a hidden message about the relationship between creators, networks, and audiences, disguised as just another funny episode. And that's far from the only time the writers slipped in commentary about themselves or the industry. In the episode The Front, where Bart and Lisa write scripts for Itchy and Scratchy under Grandpa Simpson's name, the story mirrors real-life experiences of Simpsons writers working in Hollywood, struggling to get credit or dealing with studio bureaucracy. It's satire aimed at their own industry, but casual viewers might not realize they're basically watching the writers vent their frustrations through animated characters. It's like a secret diary hidden inside a comedy show. Then there are the moments where the writers use background jokes to reveal how much they know about science, literature, and history. These aren't random throwaway gags. They're carefully placed references that reward viewers who share the same interests. For example, in one episode, Homer stands in front of a blackboard with equations predicting complex scientific concepts, including the mass of the Higgs boson particle years before it was confirmed in real life. That wasn't an accident. Several of the writers had strong academic backgrounds, so sneaking in intellectual Easter eggs became a running tradition, almost like they were challenging the audience to catch up with them. The show has even used hidden messages to break the fourth wall in clever ways. In the episode, The Simpsons Spin-Off Showcase, the writers parody the idea of TV spin-offs, creating absurd fake shows starring secondary characters. On the surface, it's just comedy, but it's also the writers openly mocking the television industry as habit of milking successful shows for all they re-worth. It's as if the writers were leaving clues about how they really felt, hiding their criticism in plain sight under layers of humor so only the most observant fans would fully appreciate it. And sometimes, these secret messages get oddly personal. Over the years, there have been little nods to the writers themselves hidden in background signs, character names, or quick one-liners. For instance, several minor characters share names with real Simpsons staff members, a subtle way of immortalizing themselves in Springfield without drawing too much attention. It's the kind of thing you'd only notice if you studied the credits or read behind-the-scenes interviews, turning ordinary jokes into inside references for the people making the show. One of the most fascinating things is how the writers sometimes left messages across multiple episodes, almost like a trail of breadcrumbs. A joke in one season might connect to a throwaway line years later, suggesting a level of planning most viewers wouldn't expect in a weekly animated sitcom. Whether it was intentional or just a byproduct of having such a tight-knit writing team, it gave the show a sense of continuity beneath all the chaos, like there was a secret conversation happening between the creators and the fans paying closest attention. Even the infamous chalkboard gags at the beginning of each episode occasionally carried hidden meanings beyond the joke of the week. Some referenced real-world controversies surrounding the show, while others seemed to address fan complaints or poke fun at the writers themselves. It turned what looked like a simple running gag into a kind of message board where the writers could sneak in thoughts, opinions, or playful jabs without interrupting the main story. And let's not forget the Halloween specials, the treehouse of horror episodes. Beneath all the parody and horror references, the writers often slipped in subtle critiques of society, politics, or even television culture itself. Episodes like The Day the Earth Looks Stupid, which parodied H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, weren't just about aliens invading Springfield. They were satirizing how people consume media and react to panic, a commentary as relevant today as it was when it aired. The more you watch The Simpsons with this in mind, the more you start noticing these secret layers. It's not just a comedy about a family in a cartoon town. It's a show where the writers constantly talk to the audience through clues, references, and meta-jokes, tucked into the corners of the screen, daring viewers to catch everything they've hidden just beneath the surface. So, when you put it all together, the secret codes hiding in plain sight, the celebrity cameos most people never even noticed, the so-called predictions that blurred the line between coincidence and prophecy, the forgotten side characters with surprisingly rich backstories, the endless stream of visual gags tucked into every corner of Springfield, and the writers' clever hidden messages, you start to see The Simpsons in a whole new light. It's not just an animated sitcom meant to make us laugh for 22 minutes at a time. It's a layered puzzle box of comedy, satire, and cultural commentary that rewards anyone willing to look closer. Every frame feels like it was crafted with care, packed with details that keep fans coming back decades later to analyze, debate, and discover something new. Maybe that's why The Simpsons has stayed relevant for so long, because beneath the yellow characters and the jokes about donuts and do-s, it's always been more than a cartoon. It's a show that hides entire worlds of secrets, waiting for us to uncover them, one Easter egg at a time.